You're laughing, genuinely laughing at something truly funny. And then, right in the middle of it, a small, cold voice in your head says, "Why am I laughing like this? This is probably just a coping mechanism." That realization doesn't come from anywhere. It simply appears. And in a single second, your laughter dies. You realize that the very act of knowing has ruined the moment. Then you realize that you're realizing that, and suddenly you're spiraling 3-4 layers deep into overthinking, all because of a joke. Welcome to a video that no one asked for, but so many people quietly need. There are two types of people watching this. The first type will finish it and sigh, thinking, "Yeah, that's me." The second type will shake their head and think, "This doesn't apply to me," only to spend the rest of the day and maybe the rest of the week noticing every single social dynamic around them with uncomfortable precision. Whichever type you are, you're here now. And we're going to talk honestly. Today, I want to talk about something that isn't discussed enough in its raw form. Being psychologically overaware, the real version, not the aesthetic one you see on social media. Not the "I'm an old soul, I'm just too deep" version, but the exhausting, relentless, sometimes heavy version that makes it hard to simply enjoy a moment without dissecting it into pieces, and makes you feel like you're experiencing life at a completely different frequency from everyone around you. In psychology, this is called metacognition, the ability to think about your own thinking. Most people only engage in metacognition occasionally, when it's useful. For those who are overaware, it runs constantly, involuntarily, and often at the worst possible moments. You're having a conversation with someone you want to appear normal in front of. Your mouth is still speaking, your eyes are still looking at them, but part of your brain has completely detached and turned into a live commentator. "I laughed a little too loud just now. Now I'm trying to compensate by speaking softer. Did they notice the change? I'm staring into their eyes too long. Now I'm avoiding eye contact." The conversation is still happening, but I'm just playing the role of someone who's having a conversation. I'm not fully in it. This isn't necessarily clinical anxiety. It feels more like you always have a second tab open in your brain, running silently in the background, quietly draining your mental resources. Imagine a more intimate scenario. Your closest friend is telling you about their ordinary day. They're smiling, they're talking, and they gloss over one particular detail twice now. You notice it instantly. You can't not notice it. While you're still nodding, still smiling, still genuinely caring, another part of you is running in parallel. They're avoiding that part. Why? Are they trying not to worry me? Or are they hiding something? Should I ask directly to show I care? Or should I stay silent to respect their space? If I ask, will it make them uncomfortable? If I don't, am I pretending I didn't notice? You are both inside the conversation and outside of it, at the same time watching it, and analyzing your own watching. And the other person is still casually talking about their day as if nothing is happening. That is the cost of being overaware. Research in social cognition and theory of mind shows that people with a stronger ability to infer others' mental states are often exceptionally good at reading microcues, subtle shifts in eye contact, tone of voice, the slight mismatch between words and body language, pauses that last just 0.3 seconds longer than normal. They're scarily good at it. They notice when someone says, "I'm fine," but is actually carrying 7 or 8 different layers of emotion. They notice when a smile never quite reaches the eyes. But this ability comes at a high price. You see the strings on everything. You're watching a good movie, genuinely moved, and suddenly your brain switches to analysis mode. This scene was edited this way to manipulate the audience's emotions. The music swells at exactly the right moment. The main character's line is setting up the plot twist later. Am I crying because of the story or because of the filmmaking technique? You're truly happy with your partner, with friends, or in a quiet afternoon, and then part of your brain immediately starts cataloging. What exactly is making me happy right now? Is it hormones? Am I avoiding something else? Or is this moment so fragile that I need to memorize it before it disappears? And even though the happiness is still there, it becomes a little smaller, a little dimmer. Why do so many people become like this? Most overaware people grew up in environments where paying extremely close attention was a genuine survival strategy. It didn't always involve dramatic trauma. Sometimes it was simply homes where moods were unpredictable, warm and affectionate one day, cold and distant the next, with no clear reason. Praise one morning, silent disappointment the next. In those environments, reading the room wasn't a social skill. It was a way to predict danger, to prepare yourself, to avoid being hurt unexpectedly. You learned very early, attention equals safety, and you became exceptionally good at it. The problem is that when you grew up, the environment changed. The threat was no longer there, but your nervous system never got the memo. Psychologists call this hypervigilance a state of heightened alertness that was once necessary for survival, but continues operating long after the danger has passed. It's like a smoke detector that was set during a real house fire and now goes off every time you toast bread. The environment has become safe, but your brain is still living in wartime mode. And with all of this comes a very specific kind of loneliness. It's not the loneliness of having no friends or no partner. You can have deep, meaningful relationships. Yet there's still a quiet, persistent gap. You're experiencing everything at a frequency that most people around you haven't tuned into yet. You long to be understood at the same depth that you understand others. You want someone to see all the hidden layers behind every word and every small gesture. But that rarely happens. And because you're fully aware of how rare it is, you're not even allowed the blissful ignorance of not knowing what you're missing. Someone once described it perfectly. You're like a translator speaking a language that no one else in the world is learning. You can translate everything, but no one understands the language you're using. Most importantly, I need to say something many people get wrong. Being over-aware does not mean you're always right. You can be incredibly perceptive about human behavior patterns. You can see things others don't, and yet you can still be completely wrong about a specific moment or a specific person. Awareness is not accuracy. It's only sensitivity. And when that sensitivity isn't paired with humility and curiosity, it easily turns into a more sophisticated, more complex, and sometimes more dangerous form of assumption. You read someone's tone, build an entire story in your head, live with that story for days or even weeks, and only later discover you misunderstood everything. The people who use this trait in the healthiest way are those who've learned to hold their perceptions loosely like scientific hypotheses, not final verdicts. They also have a special relationship with honesty. They struggle with superficial social performances, not always because they're highly principled, but because they see through the performance so easily that maintaining it feels exhausting. They sit there, smiling politely on the outside, while inside their mind they're thinking, "We both know this isn't what's really happening right now." It creates an undercurrent of existential impatience that's very hard to explain to others. But here is the core thing I want you to sit with. Awareness is not the same as wisdom. They stand next to each other, but they are not the same. You can see everything and still understand very little. True insight requires more than observation. It requires integration, time, the courage to be surprised by yourself, and the willingness to turn that same sharp analysis inward toward your own shadows. The people who turn being over-aware into a real gift are those who dare to do the hardest work, applying that same intense curiosity to their own patterns. And they often discover that many things they thought they were reading in others were actually projections from their own wounds. The very hypervigilance that once protected them can now sometimes make them paranoid or self-isolating. If you're still here, still listening at this moment, I want you to hear this clearly. The way you move through the world with attention so close it sometimes feels too close, with all its exhaustion, its painful precision, and its quiet ache that you've rarely shared with anyone. It is not a malfunction. It is not something that needs to be fixed or dimmed until it becomes normal. It is simply one way of being human, a very particular, often tiring, but sometimes profoundly beautiful way. It comes with its own costs and its own gifts. And most people who carry this way of being have never had anyone say it to them plainly. You are not too much. You are not broken. You are simply paying attention at a level that is sometimes deeply inconvenient, sometimes lonely, but also sometimes incredibly deep and beautiful. Thank you for staying with me until the end. If this video touched you, feel free to leave a small sign in the comments, just one word like seen or too accurate, so others know they're not alone. We don't have to change who we are. We only need to learn how to live more gently with the way we already exist. See you in the next one.